Confidence that asks for approval is weakness. Confidence that explains itself is fear. The kind that terrifies people never announces itself. It arrives already decided. Most will never reach it because it demands the death of their need to be liked. What follows strips away emotional leakage. Your presence becomes heavier, quieter, harder to read. By the end, you stop performing confidence and start controlling the room. Most people believe confidence is something you display, but that belief alone guarantees they will never possess real power. Display is performance, and performance depends on an audience. The moment your confidence requires observation, validation, or reaction, it is no longer yours. It belongs to the room. True confidence is not an expression, it is a settled internal position. A decision already made, immune to external feedback. When your inner verdict is final, the outside world loses its ability to influence you. This is why confident people rarely feel the need to convince. Convincing is a form of asking. Asking places you below the listener psychologically. When you explain yourself excessively, justify your choices, or seek agreement, you silently communicate uncertainty. People sense this immediately, even if they cannot articulate it. Human beings are wired to detect hesitation. Confidence that terrifies others removes hesitation entirely. There is no internal debate left to leak through tone, posture, or words. Internal finality changes how you move through social space. You stop scanning faces for approval. You stop adjusting your behavior to maintain acceptance. You stop calculating how you are perceived. This absence of self-monitoring creates a dangerous calm. Others feel it as emotional weight. They feel watched rather than watching, evaluated rather than evaluating. This reversal of psychological roles is subtle but absolute. Most people collapse under pressure because their confidence is conditional. It exists only when outcomes favor them. Praise strengthens it. Resistance shatters it. That is not confidence, it is emotional dependence. Real confidence is outcome independent. You are grounded even when misunderstood, disliked, or challenged. Especially then, when pressure appears and you remain unchanged, people experience unease. Their usual tools no longer work. This is the moment intimidation begins. Not through aggression, volume, or dominance displays, but through immovability. You do not escalate. You do not defend. You do not retreat. You remain exactly where you decided to be. This signals something most people fear: self-authority. Someone who governs themselves does not need permission, consensus, or reassurance. Internal finality also eliminates emotional leakage. No defensive humor, no nervous smiles, no rushed speech, no over-explaining. Silence becomes natural, not forced. Stillness becomes comfortable. People fill the gaps with their own insecurity. They project motives, intentions, and power onto you because your interior remains closed to them. Very few ever reach this state because it requires sacrifice. Control becomes effortless because nothing external is steering you anymore. Conversations slow down. Conflicts lose urgency. You are no longer pulled into emotional exchanges you did not choose. This composure is not learned from techniques. It is earned through repeated refusal to outsource your sense of self to others. Permanently, you must abandon the need to be liked. You must release the desire to be understood. You must accept being misinterpreted without correction. This feels unbearable to the socially conditioned mind, but once crossed, something irreversible happens. You stop reacting. You start deciding. And when a person is already decided, the world feels it immediately. Most people talk because silence makes them uncomfortable. They confuse being understood with being safe, and being quiet with being invisible. This instinct exposes them. The moment you feel compelled to explain yourself, you surrender psychological ground. Explanation is a bid for acceptance. It signals that other people's interpretations matter enough to correct. Power never rushes to correct perception. Silence, when intentional, is not emptiness. It is containment. It forces others to confront uncertainty, and uncertainty destabilizes the average mind. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. When patterns are withheld, they fill the gap with assumptions, projections, and emotional noise. This is not manipulation. It is natural psychological gravity. The quieter you are, the louder their inner dialogue becomes. Most people leak their position constantly. They reveal preferences, insecurities, emotional reactions, and strategic intent through unnecessary words. This makes them readable and therefore controllable. When you reduce output, you reduce vulnerability. You become an incomplete picture, and incomplete pictures invite overinterpretation. People start attributing depth, authority, and intent where there may only be composure. This is why silence shifts power dynamics in conversation. The one who speaks the least often controls the frame. They are not reacting, they are observing. While others fill space trying to be liked or validated, you gather information. Who rushes? Who becomes nervous? Who overcompensates? These behaviors reveal status positioning without a single question asked. The instinct to clarify comes from fear of being misjudged. But misjudgment is not a threat when your identity is self-defined. You do not need others to understand you correctly to function effectively. In fact, allowing misunderstanding can be strategically advantageous. People behave more honestly when they believe they have figured you out. Silence lets them believe that. There is also a deeper layer, emotional regulation. When you speak less, you react less. Reaction creates momentum. Momentum carries you into exchanges you did not choose. Silence breaks momentum. It creates a pause where choice exists. That pause is the birthplace of self-control. Most people never experience it because they speak the moment they feel pressure. Intentional silence also filters your words. When you do speak, it is no longer impulsive. It is deliberate. This changes how your voice is received. Fewer words increase perceived value. Statements sound final instead of exploratory. Questions feel weighted rather than curious. Others lean in, not because you demand attention, but because you do not seek it. Silence is not withdrawal. It is positioning. You remain present, observant, and composed. Your body language stays open, your posture relaxed, your expression neutral. You are not hiding, you are withholding. This distinction matters. Withdrawal signals weakness. Withholding signals control. Most people will never master this because silence requires emotional self-sufficiency. You must be comfortable not being affirmed, not being clarified, not being rescued from misinterpretation. Once that comfort is established, silence stops feeling like absence and starts feeling like command. Conversations bend. People slow down. The psychological center of gravity shifts toward you, and they often never realize why. Emotional control is not the absence of emotion. It is the refusal to let emotion announce itself without permission. Most people confuse control with suppression, and suppression always leaks. What they call self-control is often internal resistance, which creates tension in the body and volatility in behavior. True control feels calm because nothing is being fought. Emotions arise, are registered, and are contained. Nothing escapes unless it serves a purpose. Human beings constantly transmit emotional data. Micro-expressions, vocal shifts, breathing changes, posture adjustments. These signals are automatic for the untrained. This is why most people are readable within seconds. Their inner state writes itself on their exterior. When this leakage disappears, observers experience discomfort. They are accustomed to reading emotional cues to predict behavior. When prediction fails, uncertainty replaces confidence. Unreadability is not coldness, it is emotional discipline. You still feel pressure, irritation, excitement, or fear, but those states do not own your nervous system. They pass through without hijacking your actions. This creates an internal gap between stimulus and response. In that gap, choice exists. Choice is the core of power. Most people react immediately because reaction relieves tension. It gives the illusion of control. In reality, it hands control to the trigger. Whoever can provoke your emotion can direct your behavior. Emotional control breaks this chain. You become unprovocable, not because nothing affects you, but because nothing dictates you. This composure alters social dynamics instantly. People test boundaries unconsciously. They apply pressure through tone, interruption, sarcasm, or emotional bait. When those attempts produce no visible reaction, the tester feels exposed. Their strategy has failed. They must either escalate or withdraw. Most withdraw. They sense they are facing someone who cannot be easily managed. There is also a physiological aspect. Controlled emotions regulate breathing, heart rate, and muscle tension. Your body moves with economy. No wasted gestures, no nervous energy. This creates a grounded physical presence. Others feel it as stability. In chaotic environments, stability attracts attention and authority without effort. Emotional control also protects you from self-betrayal. Many people say things they later regret because emotion spoke before intention. Once words are released, they cannot be retrieved. Controlled individuals speak only after internal alignment. This makes their statements consistent over time. Consistency builds credibility. Credibility builds influence. Powerful individuals do not display excitement prematurely, anger impulsively, or fear publicly. These emotions reveal leverage points. If someone knows what excites you, they can distract you. If they know what angers you, they can destabilize you. If they see your fear, they can dominate you. Emotional opacity removes these entry points. This does not mean emotional emptiness. It means emotional sovereignty. You decide when to reveal warmth, firmness, interest, or indifference. Emotional expression becomes a tool rather than a reflex. This is why emotionally controlled people often seem confident even in silence. Nothing is spilling out. Nothing is being given away for free. Most people never develop this because it requires enduring discomfort without discharge. The urge to react must be resisted repeatedly until the nervous system learns that it is safe to remain still. Once learned, control becomes natural. You no longer manage emotions. You own them. And ownership, not intensity, is what quietly unsettles everyone around you. Most people equate dominance with assertion. They believe power is proven through interruption, confrontation, or visible control. This belief traps them in constant performance. They must keep signaling strength or risk feeling irrelevant. True authority does not signal. It assumes. It does not compete for space. It occupies it naturally through restraint. Restraint is misunderstood because it is quiet. It does not announce itself. It is visible only to those paying attention. When you speak less, you force others to speak more. When you move slower, you control the pace of interaction. Speed is often a sign of anxiety. Slowness suggests certainty. The person who is not rushing implies they have time, options, and control. Words carry weight only when they are scarce. Most people dilute their influence by oversharing. They explain their thinking, justify their decisions, and narrate their intentions in real time. This creates familiarity, not authority. Authority requires distance. When your words arrive infrequently, they interrupt noise. People adjust their attention because they know something deliberate is coming. Restraint also protects you from unnecessary conflict. You do not challenge every disagreement. You do not correct every error. You do not assert dominance where it is not required. This is not passivity. It is strategic conservation. Power that is constantly exercised loses its edge. Power that is held creates tension. Tension creates compliance. Most people fear gaps in conversation. Silence feels like loss of control to them. You allow gaps to exist. You do not rush to fill them. This forces others to recalibrate. They either reveal more than they intended or soften their position to regain comfort. In both cases, restraint gives you leverage without confrontation. Dominance through restraint also signals self-trust. You are not reactive to challenges because you do not feel threatened by them. Challenges are data, not attacks. When someone tests you and you respond with measured calm instead of escalation, the dynamic shifts. The test fails. The challenger feels smaller without you having to assert superiority. Physical restraint matters as much as verbal restraint. Still posture, controlled gestures, relaxed presence, no fidgeting, no pacing. These behaviors communicate nervous energy. Removing them communicates stability. People mirror stability unconsciously. When you remain composed, the room settles around you. This type of dominance is difficult for the unaware to identify. They sense it, but cannot explain it. They may describe you as intimidating, confident, or serious without knowing why. The reason is that restraint removes openings. There is nothing to push against, nothing to provoke, nothing to manipulate. You become frictionless. Most attempts at dominance fail because they rely on forcing outcomes. Forcing creates resistance. Restraint creates alignment. People move with you because you do not push them. They adjust because your presence sets the tempo. The greatest advantage of restraint is that it keeps you internally clean. No emotional residue, no regret, no overexposure. You leave interactions exactly as you entered them, composed and intact. Over time, this consistency builds a reputation that speaks before you do. Very few adopt this approach because it requires comfort with not being seen as impressive in the moment. Restraint delays gratification, but the long-term effect is undeniable. When you finally do act, speak, or assert, it lands with disproportionate impact, not because you demanded attention, but because you trained others to listen. Most people believe confidence comes from winning. That belief ensures they remain fragile. When self-worth is tied to outcomes, every result becomes a verdict on identity. Success creates temporary elevation. Failure creates collapse. This cycle produces anxiety disguised as ambition. True confidence emerges only when outcomes lose their authority over your sense of self. Outcome dependency is emotional servitude. If approval, victory, or validation determines your internal state, you are being controlled by forces outside yourself. This is why pressure breaks people. They are not afraid of losing the situation, they are afraid of losing themselves inside it. Remove that fear, and pressure becomes irrelevant. Detachment does not mean indifference. It means clarity. You still aim to win, to perform, to execute effectively. But the result does not define you. You act fully, then release the outcome. This internal separation changes everything. You stop forcing results. You stop chasing reactions. You stop negotiating your behavior for acceptance. People who are outcome independent behave differently under stress. They do not rush. They do not overcorrect. They do not plead through tone or posture. They remain internally stable regardless of external volatility. This stability is felt immediately. Others sense that their approval no longer has leverage. That realization is unsettling. Most social dynamics are built on unspoken bargaining. People trade validation, agreement, or inclusion for compliance. When you remove your need for these currencies, the transaction collapses. You become unpredictable in the most threatening way, not erratic, but unbribable. There is no emotional reward or punishment that can move you. This is why outcome independence often looks like confidence to others. In reality, it is freedom. Freedom from fear of rejection, freedom from fear of embarrassment, freedom from fear of loss. When fear loses its grip, behavior becomes clean and decisive. There is a hidden advantage here. When you are not attached to outcomes, you see situations more clearly. Emotional investment narrows perception. Detachment widens it. You notice leverage points others miss. You choose better timing. You make fewer impulsive mistakes. Paradoxically, detachment often increases success, but that success is a side effect, not the goal. Most people never experience this state because they confuse desire with attachment. You can want something deeply without needing it to validate you. This distinction requires internal discipline. It requires repeatedly choosing self-respect over reassurance, silence over explanation, stillness over reaction. Outcome independent individuals are difficult to manipulate. Threats lose power. Promises lose appeal. Social pressure fails. When people realize they cannot move you emotionally, they adjust. Some withdraw, some attempt escalation, some seek alignment. Regardless, the dynamic has shifted in your favor. This is where intimidation quietly begins. Not through dominance displays, but through emotional immunity. Others feel exposed because their usual tools no longer work. They rely on approval, fear, or urgency to influence behavior. You rely on decision. This form of confidence cannot be taught quickly. It is built through deliberate non-reaction to wins and losses alike, through maintaining self-definition in both praise and criticism. Over time, the nervous system learns a new rule. Nothing external determines your worth. Once that rule is internalized, fear dissolves. And when fear dissolves, confidence no longer needs reinforcement. It simply exists, unshakable, silent, and unsettling to those still controlled by outcomes. Weakness rarely announces itself as incompetence. It appears as speed. Speed of reaction, speed of speech, speed of judgment. Most people move too quickly because they are internally uncomfortable with uncertainty. They rush to respond in order to regain a sense of control. This habit is mistaken for confidence, but it is the opposite. It is unconscious behavior driven by emotional pressure. Unconscious action removes choice. The moment you react automatically, you surrender authorship of your behavior. The trigger decides for you. Whether it is a comment, a look, a challenge, or a tone shift, the external stimulus becomes the driver. Power begins where this chain is broken. The break happens in the pause. A pause that is not hesitation, but observation. In that space, information appears. You notice inconsistencies, emotional cues, motivations. Most people miss these details because they are already speaking, defending, or counterattacking. Awareness requires stillness. Reaction feels relieving because it discharges tension. But relief is not control. It is escape. Every time you react impulsively, you train your nervous system to depend on discharge rather than regulation. Over time, this creates volatility. You become predictable. Predictability is exploitable. Conscious behavior, by contrast, is slower. Not because you lack intelligence, but because you are processing at a deeper level. You are evaluating intent, not just content. Tone, timing, and context matter more than words. When you delay response, you signal that the interaction does not own you. Most people fear this pause because they associate it with weakness. They believe silence means they are losing ground. In reality, the opposite is true. The person who can remain composed in uncertainty is the one in control. Others begin to fill the gap. They explain, justify, overexpose. Their unconscious behavior reveals itself. This is how power accumulates quietly. You do not need to outtalk anyone. You let them talk themselves into visibility. Their reactions expose their priorities, insecurities, and leverage points. You remain centered, collecting data. Unconscious behavior is also emotional. Anger flares, excitement spikes, defensiveness appears. These states narrow perception. Conscious control widens it. You feel the emotion, but you do not obey it. You let it pass without expression. This preserves strategic clarity. Most people live in stimulus-response loops. Compliment equals warmth. Criticism equals defensiveness. Challenge equals aggression. These loops can be predicted and exploited. When you step outside them, others feel destabilized. Their scripts fail. This discipline requires practice. The urge to respond immediately is strong. The body wants release. You must train yourself to sit in that discomfort without action. Over time, the discomfort fades. The pause becomes natural. Once this happens, your presence changes. You appear thoughtful, measured, deliberate. People interpret this as intelligence and authority. In reality, it is awareness. Strength is not force. It is control over impulse. It is the ability to choose your response rather than be chosen by it. This is why the most powerful individuals often seem calm in situations that unsettle others. They are not braver. They are more conscious. Very few people ever slow down enough to access this level of control. They live reactively, believing speed equals strength. But those who learn to pause, observe, and decide operate on a different level entirely. They are no longer participants in chaos. They are architects of outcomes. Timing is the invisible weapon most people never learn to use. They reveal too early, act too fast, confront too directly. This impatience comes from insecurity. They want resolution now because uncertainty feels threatening. Strategic individuals understand something different time exposes more than pressure ever will. When you move too soon, you educate others about your intentions. You show your hand before the game has developed. This invites resistance, counters, and defensive behavior. When you wait, people reveal themselves. They grow comfortable. Comfort breeds carelessness. Carelessness leaks truth. Underestimation is one of the most powerful positions you can occupy. When people believe they understand you, They stop watching closely. They assume your limits, predict your reactions, and categorize you. This false certainty becomes your cover. You are no longer seen as a variable. You are dismissed as known. That is when leverage accumulates quietly. Most people fear being underestimated because their ego demands recognition. They want credit before results. This need exposes them. Strategic restraint requires ego discipline. You allow others to think they are ahead. You allow them to believe they are in control. You do not correct their assumptions. You let them build confidence on incomplete information. Timing also governs confrontation. Not every challenge deserves a response. Responding immediately validates the challenge. It elevates it. Silence, delayed response, or calm acknowledgement often dissolves it. When you choose the moment of engagement, you control the frame. You decide when conflict becomes meaningful. There is a psychological shift that happens when someone realizes too late that they misjudged you. Shock replaces confidence. Their internal narrative collapses. They scramble to reassess while you remain composed. This asymmetry is destabilizing. It forces them into reaction mode while you stay deliberate. Strategic individuals understand that power is cumulative. You do not need to win every interaction. You need to position yourself so that when you do act, the outcome is inevitable. This requires patience. Patience is uncomfortable because it delays gratification, but delayed action often produces irreversible results. Timing also protects you from unnecessary exposure. Acting early means explaining, justifying, managing perception. Acting later often requires none of that. The environment has already shifted. People have already revealed their positions. Your move appears natural rather than aggressive. This is why calculated stillness is so often mistaken for passivity. The unaware believe nothing is happening. In reality, observation is happening. Patterns are being logged. Weak points are being noted. Alliances, motivations, and fears are becoming visible. When you finally act, it feels sudden to others. To you, it feels overdue. The groundwork was laid long before. The decision was made quietly. Execution is simply the final step. Most people never develop this level of timing because it demands trust in yourself over external momentum. You must resist pressure to act prematurely. You must tolerate being misunderstood. You must allow the situation to mature. Those who master timing rarely need to assert dominance. Their actions land with disproportionate force because the context has been prepared. Others feel blindsided not because you were deceptive, but because they were careless. This is not manipulation. It is awareness paired with restraint. You are not creating chaos. You are allowing it to reveal itself. And when it does, you step in with precision rather than urgency. This content is for educational and self-development purposes only. It explores psychological principles, awareness, and personal discipline, not manipulation, coercion, or harm. Any actions or interpretations are the viewer's responsibility. The creator does not promote unethical behavior, harassment, or misuse of psychological knowledge.